I'm Olivia Mitchell, 32, and my parents still introduce me as their struggling daughter. Tonight at my brother Tyler's engagement dinner, Mom whispered to relatives how I never lived up to my potential, while I quietly sipped my wine. Little did they know I had built a tech company now valued at $700 million under a pseudonym. I kept my success private for 3 years, tired of their constant criticism. But then Tyler's fiancée Rebecca stared at me across the table and gasped, "Wait, you're the Olivia Carter?" Before sharing my story, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Growing up in Newton, Massachusetts, a prestigious Boston suburb where success was measured by Ivy League acceptances and professional titles, I learned early what it meant to be the disappointing child. Our colonial-style home with its manicured lawn and honor student bumper stickers told our community exactly what kind of family the Mitchells were: achievers, competitors, winners. My father, George Mitchell, was a senior partner at one of Boston's oldest law firms. His Harvard Law degree hung prominently in our living room, impossible to miss during family gatherings. My mother, Eleanor Mitchell, had given up her nursing career to manage our family's social calendar and reputation with military precision. Together, they created an atmosphere where achievement wasn't celebrated, it was expected. My brother Tyler was their masterpiece. For years older than me, he was everything they valued. Captain of the debate team, varsity lacrosse player, and student body president with acceptance letters from Yale, Princeton, and ultimately Harvard Law. His room overflowed with trophies, while dinner conversations revolved around his latest accomplishments. Tyler just secured an internship with Judge Williams for the summer, Mom would announce to dinner guests. The youngest intern they've ever accepted. Meanwhile, I sat quietly at the end of the table, more interested in the circuit board hidden in my lap than the conversation. I had dismantled and rebuilt my first computer at 11, taught myself coding languages at 13, and created a primitive inventory management system for Dad's law firm at 15. But these achievements existed in a different universe from what my parents understood or valued. "Computers are for playing games, Olivia," Dad once said when I tried showing him my first website. "You need to focus on debate club if you want to get into a good college." He hadn't even looked at my screen. While Tyler received private tutoring for the SATs, I was borrowing advanced programming books from the library. When he got a car for his academic achievements, I was using my babysitting money to buy components for my projects. My room became my sanctuary, walls covered with diagrams for apps and business ideas, while I listened to lectures from MIT and Stanford through free online courses. "Why can't you be more like Jennifer's daughter?" Mom would ask regularly. "She's president of the French club and volunteers at the hospital. That's how you build a resume." The Parker's daughter was pre-med at Johns Hopkins. The Goldsteins twins were at Princeton and Columbia. The Wang's son had just been accepted to Stanford Business School. These names and achievements were recited at family dinners like scripture. My junior year of high school, I developed an inventory tracking system that caught the attention of my computer science teacher, who encouraged me to enter a state competition. When I won first place, I rushed home excited to finally have something my parents would recognize. "That's nice, honey," Mom said, barely looking up from planning Tyler's Harvard Law School acceptance party. "But colleges really look for well-rounded students. Maybe you should join student council next year." By senior year, I had stopped sharing my accomplishments altogether. When acceptance letters arrived from MIT, Caltech, and Carnegie Mellon, all with substantial scholarships, my parents seemed more concerned about the prestige factor than my obvious aptitude. "Computer science?" Dad scoffed when I announced my major. "That's a support role, Olivia. Lawyers and doctors are the ones who actually lead. You're limiting yourself." Despite their disapproval, I enrolled at MIT, throwing myself into coursework that finally challenged and excited me. I thrived in the environment of innovation and problem-solving, graduating summa cum laude with multiple job offers. My graduation ceremony was the perfect metaphor for my childhood. My parents attended but spent most of the time networking with the families of Tyler's law school friends who happened to be there. As I crossed the stage to receive my diploma with highest honors, I searched the audience for my parents' faces. They were looking down at their phones, missing the moment entirely. That night, while Tyler received an expensive watch to celebrate completing his second year of law school, I received practical kitchenware for my new apartment. "You'll need these basics until you figure out what you're really doing," Mom explained. I nodded and packed away both the dishes and my graduation honors, already planning my next steps in a world where my achievements might finally be recognized for what they were. Landing a junior developer position at Horizon Technologies felt like my first real victory. Located in a sleek glass tower in downtown Boston, Horizon was revolutionizing the fintech industry with innovative payment processing solutions. The starting salary was impressive, but what really excited me was working with cutting-edge technology and some of the brightest minds in the field. I moved into a small apartment in Cambridge and spent my first weekend decorating it with plants and framed prints of Ada Lovelace and Grace Hopper, women who had pioneered the field I was now entering. For the first time, I felt hopeful about my future and excited to share this new chapter with my family. The following Sunday, I dressed carefully for dinner at my parents' home, selecting a professional outfit and bringing a bottle of champagne to celebrate. Tyler would be there too, home from a summer internship at a prestigious New York law firm. "Olivia has news," Mom announced as we sat down to her traditional pot roast. She smiled expectantly, perhaps thinking I'd finally chosen a more suitable career path. "I accepted a position at Horizon Technologies," I said, unable to contain my excitement. "They're one of the fastest-growing fintech companies in the country. I'll be working on their core payment processing platform." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of forks against plates. "Is that some kind of IT help desk?" Dad finally asked, frowning. "No, it's software development. I'll be coding their financial systems and..." "Well, that should keep you busy until you find something with more growth potential," Mom interrupted, reaching for the salt. "Tyler, tell everyone about Judge Brennan's offer." Just like that, my moment evaporated. Tyler launched into a detailed account of his internship, complete with anecdotes about partnering golf games and private club lunches. I quietly uncorked my champagne and poured myself a glass that no one else wanted. My first weeks at Horizon were both exhilarating and challenging. The learning curve was steep, with code reviews that left me working late into the night to improve my skills. My team leader, Marcus, was demanding but fair, pushing me to think more creatively about problem solving. The gender imbalance was immediately obvious. In a department of 30 developers, only 4 were women. During my first project meeting, I suggested an alternative approach to a database structure that would improve scalability. "That's an interesting beginner's perspective," said Craig, a senior developer, patting my shoulder. "But we prefer proven methods here." 3 weeks later, the team implemented my exact suggestion after performance issues arose, but Craig presented it as his own insight. This pattern repeated itself in various forms. My ideas were overlooked in meetings, but embraced when repeated by male colleagues. I was frequently asked to take notes or order lunch despite having the same job title as my male peers. The subtle undermining was constant but difficult to address without being labeled difficult or oversensitive. 6 months into my position, I met Jennifer Santos, the newly hired VP of Product Development. During a company-wide hackathon, she stopped by my workstation where I was developing a prototype for a new mobile payment interface. "This is impressive work," she said, reviewing my code and design. "You're thinking about user experience in a way most back-end developers don't." Jennifer became an unexpected mentor, inviting me to strategy meetings and challenging me to expand my skills beyond coding into system architecture and product vision. Under her guidance, I developed confidence in my abilities and began to see a path forward in the industry. "You have unusual insight into both the technical and business sides," she told me during one of our coffee meetings. "That's incredibly rare and valuable. You should be thinking about where you want to be in 5 years because you could go far." Her words were a revelation after years of being told I was reaching too high. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future where I wasn't just a coder but a creator and leader. Then came the layoffs. Despite record profits, Horizon announced a strategic restructuring to please shareholders. Entire teams were eliminated overnight, including many junior positions. Despite excellent performance reviews, I found myself called into HR on a rainy Tuesday morning. Jennifer fought to keep me, but was overruled by executives who saw newer employees as easily replaceable. "This is short-sighted," she said as I packed my desk. "You'll bounce back from this, and someday they'll regret letting you go." I believed her until I had to tell my parents. The dinner that followed was excruciating. "The tech industry is so unstable," Mom sighed, serving pot roast that I could barely swallow. "This is why traditional professions matter. Tyler's firm has been around for 100 years. Maybe this is for the best," Dad added. "Law school applications are still open for next fall." "You always had a knack for debate." That night in my apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes from a failed IKEA shelving attempt, I finally broke down. Years of diminishment and doubt crashed over me at once. I sobbed until my throat hurt, curled on my IKEA futon that was as incomplete as my parents' understanding of me. But something shifted inside me that night. Between tears, I opened my laptop and created a new email address, olivia.carter@gmail.com. Then a LinkedIn profile and professional website for Olivia Carter, consultant, developer, and system architect. Jennifer had given me several industry contacts, and I reached out to them under my new professional identity. Without the weight of family expectations attached to my name, I felt strangely liberated. Olivia Mitchell was the disappointing daughter who couldn't hold a job. Olivia Carter would be whoever I decided to make her. Within 2 weeks, I had secured my first consulting contract, a 3-month project rebuilding an e-commerce platform. Working from my apartment, I threw myself into creating something exceptional, determined to prove my worth, if only to myself. When my parents called to ask about job interviews, I kept my answers vague. "I'm exploring options," became my standard response. They assumed I was unemployed and struggling, but for once, their perception couldn't touch the reality I was building for myself. With my first consulting check, I made a decision that would shape the next 3 years of my life. I packed 2 suitcases, surrendered my apartment lease, and bought a one-way ticket to Seattle. The Pacific Northwest tech scene was booming, and the physical distance from my family felt necessary for my reinvention. I found a tiny studio apartment in Capitol Hill, just 450 square feet with a kitchenette and a view of the brick wall next door. The rent consumed nearly half my monthly income, but it was mine, and no one there knew me as Tyler's underachieving sister. The freedom was intoxicating. Living frugally became second nature. I furnished my apartment with thrift store finds and worked from coffee shops to save on utilities. My wardrobe consisted of jeans, simple tops, and one decent blazer for client meetings. Every extra dollar went into savings for what was taking shape in my mind. Not just a consulting business, but a software company of my own. Nights and weekends were dedicated to developing what would become TaskStream, a project management platform that integrated workflow automation with intuitive task delegation. The idea had germinated during my time at Horizon, watching teams struggle with fragmented tools and communication breakdowns. 6 months into my Seattle life, while working on a consulting project for a local insurance company, I met David Chin, a brilliant UX designer with a background in behavioral psychology. During a lunch break, I showed him my TaskStream prototype. "This solves problems most project management tools don't even recognize," he said, scrolling through my interface mockups. The notification prioritization alone would save teams hours of distraction. 2 weeks later, David and I were working nights and weekends together, refining TaskStream into something that felt revolutionary. He brought a user-centered perspective that perfectly complemented my technical approach. We registered Carter Technologies as an LLC, with David taking a 30% equity stake as co-founder. Our partnership worked because we shared a vision, but brought different strengths. While I built the back-end architecture, David created an interface so intuitive that new users could navigate it without training. We operated virtually without budget, using free developer tools and borrowing server space from friendly contacts. My parents' monthly calls continued, always beginning with the same question: "Have you found a real job yet?" I kept my answers deliberately vague. "I'm doing some independent work right now," I would say. Olivia, you need stability, Mom would lecture. Your brother just made junior partner. He's buying a condo in Beacon Hill. These conversations left me drained, but more determined than ever to succeed on my own terms. When TaskStream's prototype was ready, we began the grueling process of seeking seed funding. The reception was disappointing but unsurprising. Venture capital, like most of tech, was dominated by men who seemed more comfortable investing in people who looked like them. The concept is interesting, one investor told us, after a particularly discouraging pitch. But it feels too niche. Come back when you have users. Another was more bluntly sexist. Who's the technical co-founder? He asked, looking directly at David despite my introduction as the lead developer. After 15 rejections, we considered bootstrapping indefinitely until a pitch meeting with Angela Rivera at Madrona Venture Group. A former software engineer herself, Angela immediately grasped TaskStream's potential. You're solving a real problem that affects productivity across industries, she said, her eyes alight with interest. And your technical architecture is elegantly scalable. 2 weeks and several technical deep dives later, Madrona offered us $750,000 in seed funding. I cried in the bathroom after signing the papers, overwhelmed by validation after years of dismissal. With funding secured, we rented a small office in South Lake Union and hired 3 employees, a back-end developer, a sales specialist, and a customer success manager. Our team was diverse by design. I had experienced firsthand how homogeneous thinking limited innovation. 6 months of intense development followed. I worked 18-hour days, often sleeping on the office couch rather than returning to my apartment. We lived on coffee and takeout, our whiteboard walls filled with user stories and system diagrams. TaskStream evolved from concept to reality, shaped by countless iterations and late-night coding sessions. Our first major client came through David's network, a mid-sized marketing agency struggling with project coordination across remote teams. Their adoption of TaskStream provided crucial real-world feedback and, more importantly, our first success story. When they reported a 32% increase in on-time project delivery, we finally had compelling data for our sales pitch. More clients followed, first small agencies, then larger companies facing similar coordination challenges. Each implementation refined our product and expanded our understanding of workplace collaboration pain points. By our first anniversary, Carter Technologies had grown to 15 employees and moved to larger offices. Throughout this growth, I maintained my dual identity. Professionally, I was Olivia Carter, founder and CEO of an emerging software company. To my family, I remained Olivia Mitchell, still finding her way in a nebulous tech career. This deception became increasingly complicated as our company gained visibility. I declined speaking engagements that might be recorded and avoided industry events in Boston. Our company website featured David prominently but used only a small professional headshot of me. Tyler occasionally called with what passed for brotherly concern in our family. Mom and Dad are worried about you, he said during one such call. Dad has connections at some solid firms in Boston. You could come back, get established in something stable. I'm fine, Tyler, I replied, watching our development team celebrate shipping a major feature. Seattle suits me. Just think about it. Family dinner next month for Dad's birthday? You haven't been home in almost a year. I agreed to visit, dreading the performance it would require. The trip meant 3 days of downplaying my achievements and listening to thinly veiled criticism disguised as concern. I booked a modest hotel rather than staying at my parents' home, needing space to maintain my company operations remotely. The emotional toll of this double life was significant. In therapy sessions, another secret expense my parents would have considered frivolous, I explored the complex grief of building something meaningful that I couldn't share with my family. Why not tell them? My therapist, Dr. Palmer, often asked. Because they'd find a way to diminish it, I always answered. Or worse, suddenly take credit for my success after years of undermining me. The truth was more complicated. Their dismissal had become a perverse motivation, proving them wrong fueled late nights and difficult decisions. I wasn't ready to remove that emotional engine from my drive. As TaskStream gained traction, maintaining my secret became both harder and more important. I was building something transformative, but part of me remained that overlooked girl at the family dinner table, still seeking a validation I knew would never come. TaskStream's second year marked our transition from promising startup to industry disruptor. Our user base expanded from dozens to hundreds of companies, with client retention rates that made our investors ecstatic. The core innovation, our predictive workflow engine that anticipated bottlenecks before they occurred, was unlike anything else on the market. We secured series of funding of $8.5 million, allowing us to expand our team to 40 employees across development, sales, and customer success. Our new offices occupied an entire floor in a renovated warehouse in Seattle's Pioneer Square, with exposed brick walls, standing desks, and meeting spaces named after famous women in technology. My leadership style evolved with our company. Initially, I had managed by doing, coding alongside our developers and personally handling key client implementations. Now I focused on strategy and culture, determined to build the kind of company I wished I'd worked for earlier in my career. We offered generous parental leave, flexible work arrangements, and mentorship programs specifically supporting women and minorities in tech. Most tech companies talk about diversity, but build monocultures, I told our team during an all-hands meeting. We're going to succeed because of our different perspectives, not despite them. The industry began to take notice. TechCrunch featured TaskStream in an article about emerging productivity tools. Product Hunt selected us as Product of the Month. Client testimonials poured in, describing how our platform had transformed their operations. Then came the Forbes recognition that nearly exposed my carefully constructed dual identity. Their annual 30 Under 30 list featured Olivia Carter among the Enterprise Technology honorees. The article described TaskStream's innovative approach and included a quote from me about the future of collaborative work. The accompanying photo, which I had provided, was professionally shot but deliberately understated. Hair pulled back, minimal makeup, neutral expression. 2 days after publication, my mother called. "I just read the most interesting article," she said, her voice carrying that familiar note of comparison. A young woman named Olivia Carter made Forbes 30 Under 30 in technology. Isn't that something? She's built a whole company around project management software. Why can't you find opportunities like that? The irony was so acute I had to mute the call while a laugh that bordered on hysteria escaped me. "Not everyone gets those breaks, Mom," I finally responded, staring at the magazine on my desk with my face on the page. "Well, you could at least look her up. Maybe apply to work there. It says they're based in Seattle." That evening, I opened a bottle of expensive champagne alone in my new condo, a spacious 2-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. I had purchased it with cash the previous month, a luxury I allowed myself after 3 years of frugal living. As I watched ferries cross the water in the sunset, I toasted my reflection in the window, both Olivia's, visible and invisible. Our Series B funding round brought in $25 million and unprecedented scrutiny. Investors performed extensive due diligence, requiring documentation of my background and credentials. I provided everything truthfully but continued, using Olivia Carter professionally. It wasn't legally problematic. I had never formally changed my name but operated under a consistent professional identity. With the new funding came acquisition offers. 3 larger tech companies approached us with impressive numbers, eager to incorporate our technology into their ecosystems. The largest offer, $120 million from a major CRM provider, was tempting, especially to some of our investors. "This is life-changing money," Angela reminded me during a tense board meeting. "You have to consider it seriously. They'll dismantle what makes TaskStream special," I argued. "Our users trust us because we're independent and focused solely on solving their problems, not selling them other services." After weeks of deliberation, we declined all offers, choosing instead to expand our product suite and market reach. It was a risky decision, but aligned with my vision for the company. Most of the board supported me, impressed by our consistent growth and industry-leading retention metrics. By our 4th year, Carter Technologies employed over 150 people, with offices in Seattle, Austin, and Toronto. TaskStream served more than 2,000 companies worldwide, from small design agencies to Fortune 500 corporations. Our annual recurring revenue exceeded $40 million, and independent valuations placed the company's worth around $700 million. My personal life, however, remained oddly stunted. I dated occasionally, but struggled to form deep connections while maintaining such significant secrets. My closest relationships were with David and a small circle of friends who knew me only as Olivia Carter. Visits home became increasingly rare and uncomfortable, the disparity between my actual life and the one my family perceived growing wider with each success. For my 32nd birthday, I finally indulged in a luxury I'd long denied myself, a sleek black Tesla Model S, custom-ordered with every available feature. It was an extravagant purchase, but one I could easily afford. The car became a private symbol of my success, something tangible I owned as myself rather than as my company. During my next visit to Boston, I drove the Tesla to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. My father noticed it immediately as I pulled into the driveway. "That's quite a car for someone in your position," he remarked, suspicion evident in his tone. "Those run what, 90,000? "I got a good deal," I deflected, already regretting the decision to bring it. "Must be more money in computer work than I thought," he continued. "Or are you leasing it?" The interrogation continued through dinner, with increasingly direct questions about my finances. I fabricated a story about consulting for a successful startup that had offered stock options, making it vague enough to be believable without revealing the truth. My brother Tyler, now a senior partner at our father's firm, seemed skeptical but impressed despite himself. "Maybe you finally found your niche," he conceded, though the statement still carried the assumption that my work was somehow lesser than his. As I drove back to my hotel that night, I wondered how long I could continue this charade. The emotional cost was mounting, yet the thought of revealing my success filled me with anxiety. What if, after everything, they still found ways to minimize what I had built? I had created Carter Technologies to escape my family's expectations, but in some ways, I remained as constrained as ever, now by secrets of my own making. Something would have to change, but I wasn't yet ready to be the one to break the carefully constructed walls between my two lives. Tyler's engagement to Rebecca Matthews was announced with the fanfare typical of Mitchell family milestones. Rebecca came from a good family with the right connections. Her father was a federal judge, her mother a respected pediatric surgeon. She herself was a rising executive at Deloitte, with an MBA from Wharton. My parents were ecstatic about the match, which perfectly aligned with their vision of success. The engagement dinner was scheduled at Sorellina, one of Boston's most exclusive Italian restaurants. My mother had reserved a private dining room and invited an intimate group of 20 family members and close friends. I flew in from Seattle the day before, checking into the Four Seasons rather than subjecting myself to staying at my parents' home. I selected my outfit carefully, a simple black dress that was elegant without drawing attention, paired with modest jewelry. My goal, as always when returning home, was to blend into the background while revealing as little as possible about my actual life. The private dining room at Sorellina exuded old-world luxury, with crystal chandeliers, white linen tablecloths, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Family members I rarely saw gathered in small clusters, champagne flutes in hand. I accepted a glass from a passing server and positioned myself near the window, preparing for the usual barrage of well-intentioned but painful questions. "Olivia, it's been ages." Aunt Patricia approached, air-kissing both my cheeks. "Still out in Seattle? What exactly are you doing these days?" "Software consulting," I replied with the practiced vagueness I'd perfected. "It keeps me busy." "How interesting." Her tone suggested the opposite. "Your cousin Melissa just made partner at her accounting firm. 34 and already so established." This pattern repeated with each conversation. Relatives inquired about my work with thinly veiled concern, offered stories of more successful family members, then drifted away to more promising interactions. I maintained my pleasant smile and non-committal responses, counting the minutes until I could reasonably leave. My parents worked the room with practiced charm, my father's hand resting proudly on Tyler's shoulder as he introduced him and Rebecca to distant relatives. My mother pulled me aside as I returned from the restroom. "Couldn't you have worn something more festive?" she whispered, adjusting my necklace with disapproval. "And you never responded about bringing a guest." "There's still time to find someone suitable." "I'm fine, Mom," I said, gently removing her hand. "Tonight is about Tyler and Rebecca." She sighed, the sound heavy with years of disappointment. "I was just telling the Hendersons about Tyler making senior partner. Their son James is at Goldman Sachs now, vice president at 35. She glanced meaningfully at me. "Sometimes I wonder where we went wrong with you, Olivia. You had such potential." Before I could respond, she was summoned by the event coordinator to approve the seating arrangement. I remained in the hallway for a moment, gathering my composure before returning to the performance. Dinner was served with impeccable timing, 5 courses of Northern Italian cuisine paired with select wines. I was seated between my cousin's husband, whom I barely knew, and one of Tyler's law school friends. The conversation flowed around me rather than including me. From across the table, I noticed Rebecca studying me with unusual interest. Unlike the polite dismissal I received from most of my family, her gaze was curious, almost puzzled. She was striking, tall and elegant with dark hair styled in a sophisticated bob, sharp intelligence evident in her eyes. Tyler had mentioned she specialized in technology consulting for financial services, but we had never discussed my work in any detail during our brief previous meetings. My father stood to offer the first toast, crystal glass raised high. "To Tyler and Rebecca, the perfect match. Tyler has always made us proud, from his first debate trophy to making senior partner faster than anyone in the firm's history. And now he's found a partner worthy of the Mitchell name. Rebecca, we couldn't be happier to welcome you to our family." Applause rippled through the room. I clapped along, genuinely happy for my brother, despite the familiar sting of the contrast our parents always drew between us. More toasts followed, Rebecca's father speaking about the bright future ahead for the couple, Tyler's law partner sharing amusing anecdotes from their early days at the firm. Throughout these speeches, I noticed Rebecca's gaze returning to me repeatedly, her expression increasingly perplexed. As dessert was served, a delicate panna cotta with seasonal berries, my mother leaned toward my aunt at the next table, her voice carrying just enough for me to hear. "Olivia's still finding herself in Seattle," she said with a theatrical sigh. "Some computer job. Not what we hoped for, but what can you do? Not everyone has Tyler's drive." I focused intently on my dessert, the familiar shame and anger burning in my chest. After all I had built, all I had achieved, I was still the family disappointment. Part of me wanted to stand up and tell them everything about the company valued at $700 million, the team of 150 people who respected my leadership, the technology that was transforming how thousands of companies operated. Instead, I sipped my wine and maintained the facade that had become second nature. This wasn't the time or place for such revelations. As coffee was served, Rebecca excused herself from a conversation with Tyler's godparents and made her way to the empty seat beside me. "I've been trying to place why you look so familiar," she said without preamble. "We haven't really had a chance to talk properly before." "I have one of those faces," I offered with a practiced smile. "Everyone thinks they've met me somewhere." She shook her head slightly. "No, it's more specific than that. I attended the Women in Tech Summit in Chicago last month. There was a panel on emerging workspace technologies." Her voice trailed off as she studied me more intently. My heart rate accelerated. I hadn't spoken at that conference, but TaskStream had sponsored a booth, and my photo appeared in the program as a founding sponsor. "I don't think," I began, but Rebecca's eyes suddenly widened with recognition. "Wait," she whispered, leaning closer. "You're the Olivia Carter? From Carter Technologies?" The question hung in the air between us. Around us, conversations continued, silverware clinked against fine china, but at our end of the table, time seemed suspended. I considered denial, but something in Rebecca's genuine surprise broke through my carefully constructed walls. Yes, I admitted quietly. I am. Oh my God, she breathed. TaskStream completely revolutionized how my team operates. We implemented it last year and saw productivity increase by 40%. I use it every day. Her expression shifted from surprise to confusion. But why does everyone here call you Mitchell? And why does your family think you're just doing some computer job? Before I could formulate a response, Tyler approached, placing a hand on Rebecca's shoulder. What are you two conspiring about? He asked lightly. Rebecca looked up at him, then back at me, her professional composure momentarily shattered. Tyler, did you know your sister is Olivia Carter? The founder of TaskStream. The confusion on my brother's face would have been comical in any other circumstance. What are you talking about? Your sister, Rebecca repeated slowly, is the founder and CEO of Carter Technologies. The company valued at nearly $1 billion that created TaskStream, the project management platform my entire firm uses. The conversations nearest us began to quiet as people tuned into the unexpected intensity in Rebecca's voice. Tyler stared at me, incomprehension giving way to disbelief. Olivia? He questioned. Is this some kind of joke? I straightened in my chair, feeling strangely calm now that the moment had arrived. It's not a joke, Tyler. I founded Carter Technologies 4 years ago. We have over 150 employees and offices in 3 cities. The silence expanded outward from our corner of the table until the entire room had fallen quiet. My parents, sensing the shift in atmosphere, approached with concerned expressions. What's happening? My father demanded, looking between Tyler's shocked face and my composed one. Rebecca answered before either of us could speak. Mr. Mitchell, did you know that Olivia is actually a famous tech CEO? She founded Carter Technologies. It's one of the fastest-growing software companies in the country. My mother laughed nervously. There must be some misunderstanding. Olivia works in computer support or something similar. She turned to me expectantly, waiting for me to confirm her version of reality. Instead, I reached for my phone, opened the TaskStream website, and handed it to her. There on the leadership page was my photo alongside a brief biography, Olivia Carter, founder and CEO. Ms. Carter founded Carter Technologies in 2020 with a vision to transform how teams collaborate across distributed environments. My father took the phone, his expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and something unreadable. This is you? You're claiming to be this person. I'm not claiming anything, Dad, I replied, my voice steady. I am Olivia Carter professionally. I've been building this company for 4 years while you and Mom continued to talk about my potential in the past tense. The room had gone completely silent. Relatives and friends who had barely spoken to me all evening now stared openly, reassessing everything they thought they knew. But my mother began, her social composure cracking. Why wouldn't you tell us? We're your family. The question hung in the air, so simple yet impossibly complex. I looked around at the faces watching this drama unfold, some confused, others calculating, recalibrating their assessment of my value to them. Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. When have any of my achievements ever been enough? No one had an answer for that. My Aunt Patricia, who had dismissed me earlier, was already typing my name into her phone, her eyes widening at whatever she found. My cousin's husband leaned toward me with sudden interest, asking if I was taking on investors. Tyler stood frozen, his expression unreadable as he processed this revelation. Rebecca, however, seemed almost delighted by the development, her respect evident as she peppered me with questions about TaskStream's newest features. My father attempted to regain control of the situation with a forced laugh. Well, this is certainly a surprise. Who would have thought our Olivia had such entrepreneurial spirit? Must be the Mitchell genes. We've always had a head for business. The brazen attempt to retroactively claim credit for what he had consistently dismissed made something snap inside me. Years of carefully maintained composure gave way to a calm, clear truth. No, Dad, I said, my voice carrying across the now silent room. This had nothing to do with being a Mitchell. In fact, I succeeded despite that, not because of it. The words hung in the air, simple but devastating in their honesty. For the first time in my life, I saw my father speechless, unable to spin this into his preferred narrative. As relatives began approaching with newfound interest and questions about my company, I realized the careful separation I had maintained between my two lives had irrevocably collapsed. Whatever happened next would be on entirely new terms. I left the restaurant amid a flurry of questions and sudden interest from family members who had barely acknowledged me hours earlier. The cool night air felt cleansing after the suffocating tension of the dining room. I had just unlocked my hotel room door when my phone rang, Rebecca calling. "I'm so sorry," she said immediately. I had no idea that was some kind of family secret. I just couldn't believe Olivia Carter was sitting there while everyone talked about her like she was struggling. "It's not your fault," I assured her. "It was bound to come out eventually." "Tyler's in shock," she continued. "He keeps pulling up articles about you and your company. I think he's having some kind of existential crisis." Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy for my brother. His entire identity was built around being the family success story. "Would you have coffee with me tomorrow?" Rebecca asked. "I have about 1,000,000 questions about TaskStream, completely separate from all this family drama. I've been trying to get our CIO to implement your workflow automation modules for months." The request was so refreshingly straightforward, professional interest untainted by familial expectations, that I agreed immediately. The next morning, over lattes at a cafe far from my parents' neighborhood, Rebecca revealed herself to be not just a user of our platform, but a genuine tech enthusiast with insightful questions about our architecture and roadmap. "I've been following your company since your Series A round," she admitted. "Your approach to predictive workflow management is revolutionary." I never made the connection because... She hesitated. Because Olivia Mitchell couldn't possibly be behind something so successful? I finished for her. She had the grace to look embarrassed. "I'm beginning to understand why you kept your identities separate. Tyler's family has a very specific definition of success. And technology created by women doesn't fit that definition," I added. Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. "I face similar attitudes at Deloitte sometimes, though nothing like what you've described. It's why your mentorship program for women in tech caught my attention initially." Our conversation shifted to discussing industry challenges and shared experiences as women in male-dominated fields. By the time we parted, I had gained something unexpected from the previous night's revelation, a potential friend who understood both worlds I inhabited. Tyler called later that afternoon, his voice strained. "We need to talk. Can I come to your hotel?" He arrived looking uncharacteristically disheveled, his usual confident demeanor replaced by visible confusion. In my suite sitting area, he paced before finally speaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded. "All these years, letting everyone think you were barely getting by when you were building this." He gestured at his phone, open to an article about TaskStream's latest valuation. "Would it have changed anything?" I asked simply. "Would you have defended me at family dinners when Dad dismissed my career? Would you have corrected Mom when she compared me unfavorably to every successful daughter in her social circle?" His silence was answer enough. "You're my sister," he finally said, as if that explained everything. "Yes, and you're my brother. But you were also complicit in how they treated me. You accepted their narrative that I was underachieving, disappointing, not living up to my potential. It was easier than questioning why their definition of success only had room for achievements they understood." Tyler sank into an armchair, running a hand through his hair. "So you created this whole separate identity just to prove them wrong?" "No," I said firmly. "I created Olivia Carter because Olivia Mitchell wasn't allowed to succeed on her own terms. Every achievement was diminished, every interest treated as a phase to outgrow. As Olivia Carter, my work was judged on its merits, not measured against some arbitrary standard of prestige." A long silence stretched between us, filled with 3 decades of complicated family dynamics. "I looked up to you," he finally said, surprising me. "When we were kids, you could build things, figure out puzzles I couldn't solve. Then somewhere along the way, I started believing what they said about both of us, that I was the successful one and you were not. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get, and I recognized how difficult it must have been for him to admit. "I don't resent your success, Tyler," I told him honestly. "I resent that it was the only kind of success that counted." We talked for hours, excavating years of misunderstandings and assumptions. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a beginning, the first honest conversation we'd had as adults. The wider fallout was predictable. My phone filled with messages from relatives who had suddenly remembered our special connection. Second cousins with business ideas sought meetings. My mother's friends sent congratulatory notes as if they'd been supporting me all along. Most surreal was my parents' rapid revision of history. My mother called the morning after the dinner, her voice bright with forced enthusiasm. "Darling, we're just so proud of what you've accomplished. I always told your father you had an independent streak. Remember how we got you that computer for Christmas when you were 12? We always encouraged your interests." The computer had been Tyler's hand-me-down, given to me only after he'd received a newer model. I let the revisionist history pass unchallenged, recognizing it as her way of processing the shift in our family's power dynamics. My father's approach was more strategic. He called with connections who might be useful to my business, law firms specializing in technology, potential clients from his network, investment advisors eager to help manage my newfound wealth. "The Mitchell name carries weight in Boston," he reminded me. "We should leverage that for your company. Have you considered opening an East Coast office?" I deflected these offers politely but firmly. "Carter Technologies is doing quite well with our current strategy, but thank you for thinking of us." The emphasis on Carter was subtle but clear. I had built this company without the Mitchell name or connections, and I wouldn't retroactively grant them influence now. Media attention followed inevitably. A tech journalist who had previously profiled Carter Technologies connected the dots after seeing a tweet from one of my cousins boasting about our family connection. She reached out for comment, and after careful consideration, I agreed to an interview addressing the dual identity. "Many founders use pseudonyms or professional names," I explained. "Mine allowed me to build a company based on merit rather than family connections or expectations." The resulting article, "The Secret Billionaire: How Olivia Carter Built a Tech Empire in Stealth Mode," created a minor sensation in industry circles. I received messages from other founders who had similarly separated their professional identities from complicated family dynamics. At work, I addressed the situation transparently with our leadership team. David, who had known about my family situation from early in our partnership, supported my decision to acknowledge the connection publicly while maintaining boundaries. "Your family can't rewrite history now that they know you're successful," he said during a private conversation in our Seattle office. "You don't owe them access to what you've built." The most challenging aspect was establishing new boundaries with my parents, who suddenly wanted involvement in my life after years of dismissal. They suggested visiting Seattle to see my operation and meet my team. My mother proposed a feature in Boston Magazine about successful local families, with our tech dynasty as the centerpiece. "We're not a tech dynasty, Mom," I told her firmly. "I built Carter Technologies independently, and that's how it will remain." Setting these boundaries triggered familiar guilt tactics, subtle references to family loyalty, reminders of all they had sacrificed for my education, implications that my success had made me cold and ungrateful. In the past, these approaches might have worked. Now, with 4 years of therapy and professional accomplishment reinforcing my self-worth, I recognize them for what they were: attempts to regain control. 6 weeks after the engagement dinner revelation, I met with my parents at their home in Newton. The meeting was difficult but necessary, addressing decades of undermining and dismissal that couldn't be erased by their newfound pride in my achievements. "We always wanted what was best for you," my father insisted, seated in his familiar leather armchair. "Perhaps we didn't understand your interests, but our intentions were good." "Intentions don't erase impact," I replied calmly. "For years, you made me feel that who I was and what I cared about wasn't valuable. That didn't help me succeed, it made success harder." My mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "We're trying to be supportive now. Isn't that what matters? Support isn't something you only offer after someone proves their worth by your standards," I explained. It's believing in them even when their path is different from what you imagined. They listened but didn't truly hear, too entrenched in their worldview to recognize how conditional their love had been. As I left their house that evening, I accepted that our relationship might improve, but would never be what I had once hoped for. Some foundation cracks couldn't be repaired, only acknowledged and built around. Through all this upheaval, I found unexpected strength in the identity I had created for myself, not just professionally but personally. Olivia Carter wasn't just a name on business documents. She was the woman I had become when freed from the weight of others' expectations. Reconciling her with Olivia Mitchell didn't mean losing what I had built, but integrating the parts of myself I had kept separate for too long. As spring turned to summer, I returned to Seattle with clearer boundaries and a lighter heart. The company continued to thrive, our user base expanding into new industries. My relationship with Tyler evolved cautiously, with occasional video calls that felt more authentic than our previous interactions. Most surprisingly, Rebecca became a genuine friend, her understanding of both technology and family dynamics making her a unique confidant. When she proposed implementing TaskStream across Deloitte's Boston office, it was based on the product's merits rather than our personal connection. The revelation of my identity had forced painful confrontations, but it had also freed me from the exhaustion of maintaining two separate lives. For the first time since childhood, I was fully visible, my achievements, my struggles, and my worth no longer defined by anyone but myself. 6 months after my identity was revealed at Tyler's engagement dinner, autumn painted Seattle in vibrant oranges and reds. From my office overlooking Elliott Bay, I watched ferries crossing the water as I prepared for a video call with Rebecca, who had become an unexpected constant in my life. The Boston implementation is exceeding expectations, she reported, referring to Deloitte's adoption of TaskStream. The senior partners are actually using it themselves instead of having assistants manage it for them, which never happens with new tech. That's the highest compliment, I laughed. How are the wedding plans coming along? Rebecca rolled her eyes good-naturedly. Your mother has opinions about everything from napkin folds to bridesmaid shoes. But Tyler's been surprisingly supportive about keeping things manageable. My brother had undergone his own transformation in recent months. After our confrontation in my hotel room, he had begun therapy, something previously unthinkable in our family, where Mitchell men handled things themselves. He was slowly recognizing the unhealthy patterns in how we were raised and working to break them in his own life. He asked if you'd consider being a groomwoman in the wedding, Rebecca mentioned carefully. No pressure, but he's trying in his way. The old Olivia would have agreed immediately, desperate for family approval. The new one considered what she actually wanted. I'd like that, I decided. As long as everyone understands I'm not flying back for 17 fittings and rehearsals. My relationship with my parents had settled into a cautious détente. We spoke monthly, our conversations less fraught but still carefully navigated. They had visited Seattle once, touring our offices with a strange mixture of pride and discomfort at being in a world where they held no authority or expertise. It's all very modern, my mother had commented, taking in our collaborative workspaces and casual dress code. I recognized her attempt at engagement, however limited, and accepted it for what it was. My father struggled more with the new dynamic. During dinner at Canlis, Seattle's finest restaurant, he had attempted to give me business advice despite knowing nothing about the tech industry. You should consider taking the company public, he suggested authoritatively. I know several excellent securities attorneys who could guide the process. We're not ready for an IPO, I explained patiently. Our current growth strategy is working well, and we don't need the capital injection or scrutiny that comes with going public. His expression flickered between annoyance at being contradicted and a new, grudging respect. It was progress, however incremental. The professional impact of unifying my identities had been surprisingly positive. Being publicly known as both founder and technical architect of TaskStream gave me a platform to address issues I cared about, particularly the underrepresentation of women in tech leadership. I began accepting select speaking engagements, sharing not just our technical innovations, but the journey that had brought me here. At a Women in Technology conference in San Francisco, I spoke candidly about the challenges of being taken seriously as a female founder. Afterward, a young developer approached me, her expression earnest. "Your story about using a professional pseudonym really resonated with me," she said. "My family thinks coding is just a hobby I should outgrow. They keep asking when I'll get a real job like teaching or nursing." I recognized my younger self in her, talented but unsure, passionate but undermined by those who should have supported her. "What's your name?" I asked. "Amina," she replied. "Amina, listen carefully. Your talent is real. Your ambition is valid. And sometimes the people who should believe in you most are the least equipped to understand your vision." The mentorship program we launched that winter began with Amina as our first participant. Carter Fellows provided promising women technologists with funding, guidance, and internship opportunities. It became one of my most personally meaningful initiatives, addressing directly the barriers I had faced. David, who had been there from TaskStream's earliest days, watched these developments with approval. "You've come full circle," he observed during a strategy retreat at a mountain lodge outside Seattle. "From hiding your achievements to creating pathways for others." Our leadership team had expanded and diversified, with talented individuals bringing perspectives that continually improved our product and culture. I had learned to delegate effectively, focusing my energy on innovation and vision rather than trying to control every aspect of the company. My personal life flourished alongside professional success. I developed genuine friendships untainted by family expectations or professional calculations, people who knew my whole story and valued me for who I was, not what I had achieved. I even began dating again, more comfortable in my own skin and clearer about what I wanted from relationships. The most profound change, however, was internal. In therapy, I explored the lingering effects of years spent seeking validation that never came. Dr. Palmer guided me through recognizing and releasing patterns that no longer served me. "Your parents' inability to see your worth was never about you," she reminded me during a particularly difficult session. "It was about their limited vision and their own insecurities." Gradually, I stopped measuring myself against impossible standards and learned to celebrate achievements on my own terms. The constant internal critic that had driven me to prove my worth began to quiet, replaced by a gentler voice that acknowledged both successes and failures as part of a whole, worthy life. In December, I returned to Boston for a family dinner, the first since the revelation at Tyler's engagement dinner. Seated at my parents' dining table, I observed subtle shifts in the dynamics. My mother still fussed over details and managed conversations, but she no longer spoke over me or dismissed my contributions. My father asked questions about my company with genuine, if limited, interest rather than automatic skepticism. When Tyler arrived with Rebecca, the warmth between us felt authentic rather than performative. We had begun building a relationship based on who we actually were, not the roles assigned to us in childhood. After dinner, my father opened an expensive bottle of scotch, a ritual previously reserved for celebrating Tyler's achievements. As he poured 3 glasses, he cleared his throat awkwardly. "I've been reflecting on some things," he said, uncharacteristically hesitant. "I may not have appreciated your path, Olivia. I understood law, medicine, traditional business. Technology seemed intangible to me." It wasn't quite an apology, but from a man who never admitted error, it represented significant growth. "It's easier to value what we understand," I acknowledged, accepting the glass he offered. "I've learned that too, managing teams with diverse expertise." We sipped in companionable silence, the moment imperfect but honest, much like our evolving relationship. Later that evening, walking through the snow-covered garden of my parents' home, Rebecca joined me, her breath visible in the cold air. "You know what's remarkable about you," she said, watching the stars emerge in the clear winter sky. "Most people would have either remained invisible to avoid conflict or revealed everything triumphantly to prove everyone wrong. You did neither. You're building something new without burning it all down." Her observation stayed with me as I returned to Seattle and the life I had created there. The company continued to grow and evolve, as did I. The wall between Olivia Mitchell and Olivia Carter had dissolved, leaving simply Olivia, complex, accomplished, still learning and growing. The most profound lesson from my journey wasn't about success or validation, but authenticity. By hiding parts of myself to avoid judgment, I had inadvertently perpetuated the belief that who I truly was wouldn't be enough. Freedom came not from external recognition, but from finally accepting all aspects of myself, strengths and vulnerabilities, achievements and uncertainties. This spring, we're launching a foundation focused on technology education for girls from underserved communities. The first center opens next month in Seattle, with others planned for Boston, Austin, and Chicago. When asked about naming the foundation, I chose Mitchell Carter, acknowledging both where I came from and what I built. Success isn't defined by titles, valuations, or family approval. It's found in creating something meaningful while becoming more fully yourself in the process. The journey continues, but now I walk it as one complete person rather than fragments hiding from each other. Have you ever felt pressure to hide your accomplishments or change yourself to meet others' expectations? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that their path, however unconventional, is valid and valuable. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, your worth isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it.